Baik, selamat siang dan selamat datang Bapak dan Ibu para pemimpin dari berbagai industri dan organisasi, para klien setia expert, para praktisi di bidang human resource and organizational development, Bapak dan Ibu alumni Hogan, akademisi, juga asesor dan trainer yang menjadi rekan sekerja expert. Selain itu juga para follower setia expert di berbagai platform media sosial. Semoga Bapak dan Ibu semua dalam keadaan sehat. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, all of the participants. A warm welcome to our seminar, Strategic Self-Awareness for Organizational Talent Development, an insight to drive succession planning, leadership, and team development. We are truly delighted to have you with us today as we gather to explore more about how a strong capacity of self-awareness encourages talent to seek feedback and modify critical behavior to support development in their current and future roles. Perkenalkan, nama saya Hayu Prima. Saya akan memandu acara di siang hari ini. Terima kasih sudah bergabung dalam webinar pertama expert di tahun 2024 ini. Sebelumnya, saya mohon izin untuk bilingual, bukan karena expert sendiri berada di daerah Kemang, Jakarta Selatan, jadi anak Jaksel gitu ya, namun untuk mendukung proses komunikasi kita baik dengan narasumber maupun dengan Bapak dan Ibu, maka saya mohon izin untuk bilingual. Sebelumnya, saya ingin memperkenalkan tentang expert sendiri. Expert sebagai konsultan sumber daya manusia terus berupaya untuk menyediakan berbagai layanan unggul, mulai dari rekrutmen, asesmen, dan pengembangan melalui pemberian umpan balik dan berbagai program pelatihan untuk perusahaan Bapak dan Ibu sekalian. Saya yakin Bapak dan Ibu sekalian juga mungkin sudah pernah mendengar tentang hal ini. Layanan kami tersedia secara tatap muka maupun online. Semoga dengan ini bisa memberikan akses yang lebih mudah bagi Bapak dan Ibu di mana saja dan kapan saja sesuai dengan kebutuhan dan kondisi Bapak dan Ibu. Expert Consultant juga telah hadir di berbagai platform media sosial. Untuk terus terhubung dan mendapatkan update terbaru mengenai layanan expert, termasuk informasi tentang acara, pelatihan, maupun public webinar yang kami selenggarakan, kami mengajak Bapak dan Ibu untuk mengikuti akun kami di LinkedIn, di Facebook, di Instagram, TikTok, dan YouTube dengan nama Expert Consultant. Bapak dan Ibu juga bisa mengunjungi official website kami di www.expert.com. I would also welcome to our speaker and Mary Paiement, Senior Consultant Hogan Assessment System for Asia Pacific, and also our founder, Ibu Ellen Rahman, as Managing Director of Expert Consultant. Before starting this webinar session, we will hear some word from Expert Founder and our CEO, Ibu Ellen Rahman. But before, let's get to know her profile first.
Oke, terima kasih Hayu.
Silakan Ibu.
Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera buat kita semua. Om Swastiastu. Salam kebajikan dan salam sehat Bapak-bapak dan Ibu-ibu sekalian. Thank you Anne-Marie for your time and your interest to speak to all of us here in Jakarta in Indonesia. And I hope that the dialogue or the conversation between us in this webinar will be fruitful for Hogan and expert and also for all participants. Allow me to speak in bahasa, Anne-Marie. I know that you can translate it immediately. So I hope you will also comprehend what I'm talking, because for me it's more convenient to speak in bahasa. Oke, Bapak-bapak, Ibu-ibu sekalian, selamat siang dan terima kasih buat partisipasinya. Anda siang-siang, habis makan siang dan mau mendengarkan dan berdiskusi mengenai self-awareness ini. Pada waktu kita brainstorming, kita mau membicarakan apa, Anne-Marie langsung bilang self-awareness itu penting sekali. Dan saya setuju sekali self-awareness. Bahkan dalam tulisan saya yang akan datang 2 minggu yang akan datang, itu saya menulis tentang kekuasaan. Ternyata ada gejala yang namanya hubris syndrome. Itu diidap oleh para pemimpin yang kadang-kadang karena terlalu banyak kekuasaan, sehingga mereka itu seperti mabuk kekuasaan, dan ini mempengaruhi otaknya, Bapak Ibu. Mempengaruhi otaknya sehingga ada hubris syndrome ini, dan ini diderita yang ditulis oleh Bapak Owen yang adalah sekretari untuk external affairs dari UK dan juga seorang dokter, bahwa Margaret Thatcher kemudian beberapa perdana menteri lainnya itu menderita hubris syndrome. Jadi itu disebabkan karena tidak adanya awareness tentang kekuasaan dan tentang sebetulnya ya sudah toksiknya kekuasaan itu di dalam otaknya dia. Jadi saya melihat bahwa self awareness ini juga penting buat kita semua, dan bagi tiap-tiap teman-teman yang sedang mengerjakan organisasi, apakah itu di bidang HR, apakah Anda pemimpin, self awareness ini memang sebetulnya harus ditekankan pada setiap pemimpin atau setiap supervisor, bahwa mereka juga harus merefresh self awareness mereka. Nanti kita bisa dengar dari Anne-Marie. Saya punya cerita satu lagi. Teman saya itu mengeluh ya, bahwa dia itu bukan mengeluh sih, dia bercerita dan dia merasa bahwa Hogan ini sangat membantu dia untuk memecahkan masalah. Dia itu punya anak buah seorang salesman yang pandai sekali. Dan di perusahaan itu ada policy bahwa sales dan marketing itu dijadikan satu. Ini dua hal yang sangat berbeda, tapi kadang-kadang ada perusahaan yang merasa bahwa ini memang mesti dijadikan satu. Nah, dia menuntut si manajer ini, orang salesman yang bukan main bagusnya ini, untuk menjadi manajer marketing. Dan sejak itu dilakukan penekanan kepada si manajer ini agar supaya marketing itu dijalankan, digerakkan ya, ada action-action tertentu. Dan si manajer ini tidak sanggup, sama sekali tidak sanggup, dan dia akhirnya mengeluh dan barangkali memikirkan untuk melakukan mengundurkan diri. Ketika dia atasannya ini mempelajari Hogan-nya, dia sangat amazed ya, sebab di sana terlihat di dalam HPI-nya nanti akan dibicarakan oleh Anne-Marie ya, ambisinya rendah ya, kemudian adjustment-nya rendah, hubungan interpersonalnya, sensitivity-nya tinggi. Namun demikian yang paling bikin dia amazed adalah bahwa learning-nya ya, kemampuan learning-nya itu nol. Jadi mereka kemudian sama-sama membuka ya antara atasan dan bawahan itu profil dari si orang ini, orang sales ini, dan kemudian menyadari bahwa untuk mempelajari hal baru, teman kita ini si sales manager ini memang nggak bisa, nggak niat, dan memang betul-betul mentok. Akhirnya diputuskan bahwa dia tetap mengerjakan sales dan tidak menghandle marketing, dan orang itu stay. Jadi si atasan ini dapat untung bahwa teman kita sales manager itu tetap stay ya, tentunya dia harus mencari orang lain untuk melakukan pekerjaan-pekerjaan marketing, tetapi ini dia temukan melalui Hogan, Bapak-bapak. Ini cuma salah satu testimoni dari teman saya ini, dan saya semakin yakin sih bahwa orang itu from time to time memang perlu meningkatkan self-awareness. Apalagi di dalam teori-teori yang saya baca untuk mendasari tulisan saya yang akan datang ini, bahwa batas dari kekuasaan seseorang itu kalau dia mau pegang kuat, ya itu 10 tahun. Sementara saya udah 34 tahun, Bapak Ibu di expert ini, alangkah diktatornya saya coba. Saya memang, saya sendiri harus meningkatkan self-awareness saya agar supaya kita bisa sama-sama sehat dan expert, suksesi dari expert bisa berjalan. Itu sih satu cerita sedikit yang saya tidak mau mengambil waktu dari Anne-Marie terlalu banyak, ya. Silahkan berseminar Bapak-bapak dan Ibu-ibu sekalian, dan saya harap bahwa seminar siang ini berguna buat kita semua. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Terima kasih Ibu. Mungkin sebelum ini kita akan berfoto dulu ya Ibu.
Oh ya.
Baik Bapak dan Ibu, mari kita berfoto terlebih dahulu. And Mary, before we start our webinar today, we would like to take the documentation first. Let's take a picture first. Maybe we can compare after and before seminar, Annie Mary. Silakan untuk Bapak dan Ibu membuka kameranya. Kita akan berfoto terlebih dahulu. Saya akan memberikan aba-aba. Oke, 1, 2, 3. Karena ada 3 layar ya Bapak dan Ibu, kita berlatih untuk menjadi model. Jadi mohon ditahan terlebih dahulu. 1, 2, 3. Lagi 1, 2, 3. Lagi 1, 2, 3. Baik. Terima kasih Bapak dan Ibu. Oke. Before we move to our main session, I will like to give a little bit of a view about Hogan Assessment. Hogan used the powerful science of personality assessment to help organizations select the right people, develop talented employees, and build great leaders. Melalui ratusan riset yang dilakukan Hogan pada individu-individu di berbagai organisasi, Hogan melihat manusia sebagai sebuah dinamika yang hidup dengan nilai-nilai yang penting baginya serta kecenderungan perilakunya, baik dalam situasi yang menekan maupun dalam situasi keseharian. Jadi bukan hanya dalam situasi sehari-hari, tapi juga dalam situasi-situasi yang menekan yang biasanya disebut dengan dark side. Sampai saat ini, Hogan telah digunakan untuk mengakses lebih dari 11 juta peserta di seluruh dunia. Selain itu, juga Hogan bukan hanya ada di satu bahasa Inggris, tapi ada di 53 bahasa yang berbeda dan menerbitkan lebih dari 500 jurnal penelitiannya. Selain itu, juga menawarkan 974 job solution, melakukan lebih dari 1.500 studi penelitian dan mensertifikasi lebih dari 55.000 profesional. Expert have partnered with Hogan since 2011 to provide Indonesian and global organizations with various solutions in talent assessment and development. So it's a huge number, and we will hear more about how Hogan could help people or could help organizations developing talented employees and build great leaders in organization. Please welcome our senior consultant of Hogan Assessment, Anne-Marie Paiement. Hello, Anne-Marie.
Hello, how are you?
Hi. But before you tell us more about self-awareness, we would like to know about your profile first.
Sure.
So this is the surprise. And Mary, I will give you the screen. So the screen is yours, please.
Thank you. Let me share my screen. Can everyone see my screen? Yes.
Yes, we can see your screen.
Excellent. Well, welcome everyone to our webinar on strategic self-awareness for talent development. First, I want to thank EXPERD for organizing this webinar and thank every one of you who is attending across Indonesia. It's really my pleasure to be here today. And thank you, Eileen, for the warm introduction and the interesting story. I think I could understand some of it. Thank you to the advancement in technology that we have today. So in today's fast-paced and competitive world, self-awareness is not just a buzzword, but really a critical skill that can significantly impact our success. So understanding ourselves, our strengths and weaknesses, and how we compare to others will help us lay the foundation for effective talent development and successful leadership. Throughout this webinar, we'll explore the concept of strategic self-awareness and its profound implication for workplace leadership. We will first talk about the importance of self-awareness. We'll also introduce you to what we call at Hogan strategic self-awareness, and I'll explain a little bit how it differs from general self-awareness. And then we will look at what are some of the barriers to self-awareness and change. Finally, we will share 3 case studies providing you with a blueprint for developing self-awareness for people managers, teams, and high potential employees. As EXPERD has said a bit earlier, we will have a Q&A session at the end of the presentation. So please don't hesitate to pop your questions in the chat. And whether you are an HR professional, a team leader, or just someone who is looking to enhance your career, I really hope that this webinar brings you some valuable takeaways to help you or your organization navigate the complexities of talent development. So let's start by having a look at why self-awareness is so important. When we look at today's talent landscape on a global level, we are seeing significant changes in the job market. I think that's something that everyone can agree with. AI and the digital economy are creating new roles and new jobs while replacing more traditional ones. As such, it is estimated that 25% of jobs will significantly change in the next 5 years. And this creates a huge need and pressure on organization as failing to adapt and develop and evolve your talents can lead to business stagnation. So to successfully adapt to the rapid changes, it is really important that individuals and organizations clearly identifies the strategic skills and gaps and needs for their talent development. But in order to do that, this all requires a very strong capacity for self-awareness, which is really the central element of a successful talent development program. The reason why self-awareness is so important is because it gives us the power to actually influence outcomes. It helps us become better decision makers. It allows us to understand things from multiple perspectives. And are you seeing the right screen?
Yes.
Yes, okay, thank
Yes,
you. I just had a doubt because I could not see the little red rectangle that I usually see. Self-awareness really gives us the power to influence the results and the outcomes. So because we're more self-aware, we can make better decisions. We're able to understand things from different perspectives, and it also frees us from many assumptions and biases and enhances our communication. And we know that because there are clear differences between leaders who are self-aware and leaders who lack self-awareness. So leaders who are self-aware usually will proactively seek feedback from and in multiple forms. And that's because they understand that they don't know everything. They understand that others might know things about themselves or things about the environment that are very important. And because they recognize that, they will act on that feedback. And because they act on that feedback, people will actually notice that they are adjusting and adapting and changing to better respond to their environment. And this results usually in more success. So talent who know themselves and who has a great self-awareness end up creating better employee engagement as a leader, and also making the world a better place to work in. On the other hand, if we contrast with talent who lack self-awareness, it's a completely different scenario. Talent who lack self-awareness usually will miss feedback signals. So even if people are trying to give them feedback or telling them some suggestion, they won't listen to it, or they will dismiss it as not being important. When they do acknowledge the feedback, instead of seeing what parts they are contributing to that problem or what is their responsibility, they are unable to admit their faults or their flaws and end up ignoring the feedback. And that leads them to being very slow to change. Either they don't see the point of changing, or because they don't recognize the importance of changing, they will resort to old patterns or old behaviors when they are faced with stress. And unfortunately, because they're unable to change the critical behaviors that their environment is asking them to change, they end up having a hard time succeeding at their career, and they make it difficult for everyone else. I'm sure you all have one example in your mind of a colleague or a leader that might have lack self-awareness. So lack of self-awareness has really important consequences for leaders. It prevents them from adapting to their environment and eventually leads to their failure.
And Mary, can I ask something?
Absolutely.
What could be a warning sign that a person would benefit from greater self-awareness?
There are many different ones. I think based on my experience and based from what other people have told me, the first one I would be aware of or very attentive to is when there is an impact on relationship. So strained relationship is a good example of a warning sign that someone might benefit from developing a bit more self-awareness. Lack of progress or growth, so stagnation or repeated setbacks in achieving personal professional goals might also indicate that there's something you're doing that isn't working, but why isn't it working? So it might be good to take a step back. And repeated patterns of failures as well are also a warning sign. The last one I would say is also difficulty receiving feedback. So I've just highlighted how this seems to be very typical. So if you notice yourself or someone else that is consistently reacting defensively or dismissively to feedback, it might suggest a lack of self-awareness regarding there might be a gap between what they believe is their strength, their weaknesses, and areas of improvement versus what other people are thinking.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you for that great question. Don't hesitate to ask questions during the presentation, Heidi. So at this point, I think it's quite important. You might agree that strategic self-awareness is very important. But what about strategic self-awareness? So that's a very Hogan concept. And at Hogan, we differentiate between self-awareness and strategic self-awareness. So strategic self-awareness has two components. The first component is understanding one's strengths and limitations. The second component is understanding how those, so your strengths and your limitation, might compare with others, and how they can help or prevent you from achieving specific goals and navigating challenges. Now, that second part, how you compare yourself to others, or how you compare to others, is what really sets strategic self-awareness apart from regular self-awareness. So as some of you were waiting for the webinar to start, there were different videos, and something that was highlighted was different strength, or how there's a bright side and inside and a dark side of your personality. So strategic self-awareness in some ways is understanding the similarities and differences between your identity, what you think and who you think you are, versus your reputation. So, and that's who others think you are, and how this might facilitate or derail you in achieving what you need to do to adapt. And this is where learning about your personality from a reputational standpoint can be extremely helpful in cultivating strategic self-awareness for either your own talent development or for the talent development inside your whole organization. You might wonder, but how is personality related to self-awareness? Well, personality provides you with a framework for understanding how we are similar, but also how we differ. And as such, we know, like, studies keep demonstrating that humans have 3 essential and universal goals, which is trying to get along, trying to get ahead, and finding meaning. So that's something that we all have in common. However, we all differ in how we do try to get along, how we try to get ahead, and how we try to find meaning. So some will tend to be very organized in most situations, and others will be a bit more go with the flow and see how things are unfolding without stressing too much about that. Some people will be very talkative. You saw in the video, there was the example of the sociability personality characteristic, while others will be a bit more observant. And so this is where your personality really comes at play. And it's understanding more about your personality is important because your personality characteristic shapes your leadership style. So for example, your values, what we call the inside part of your personality, will determine what sort of environment you will strive to create. So if affiliation is something that is important for you, you as a leader or as an organization, you will try to foster collaboration. On the other hand, if you are, if security is something that is that you value, well, you will work to create predictability in the environment. Your personality also determines the unique strength that you bring at work, what we call the bright side of personality. Are you ambitious, being seen as self-starting and proactive when it comes to your task? Or maybe you're perceptive and tactful in your communication, what we refer to as interpersonal sensitivity. And finally, your personality will determine your leadership risk. This is what we refer to as the dark side of your personality. These are strengths that, when overused, can derail your career. So I'll take the bull characteristic as an example. We'll have later on an example of a real-life celebrity leader that displays characteristic of bull. But basically, bold leaders are highly confident in their abilities, but under stress, their overconfidence is so high that they end up being perceived as arrogant and entitled, continuing over and over again to make the same wrong decision because they are convinced that they are the ones that are right, even though they are receiving different signals from their environment. So learning more about your personality is important if you want to cultivate self-awareness, because depending on the situation, your team might need you to display very different behaviors, sometimes behavior that are very far from your personality baseline. But if you know where you're starting from a personality standpoint, well, strategic self-awareness will give you the opportunity to stop, to choose with intention, if you should act like you're used to behaving, or maybe thinking about trying something else that might make you more successful in those new circumstances. So strategic self-awareness is really key to adapting to change and knowing more about your personality, how you are unlike others, and more importantly, how you differ from others is key to nurturing strategic self-awareness and guiding talent development.
And Mary, you say about individual, we talk about individual, but what is the connection between individual self-awareness itself with the capacity of the organization to change? What's the relation between individual and then the organization itself?
Well, an organization cannot change if individuals in the organization doesn't recognize the need to change, right? So organization change is very dependent on individuals' capacity for self-awareness and their capacity to recognize what has made them successful as an organization, and how individually and what they need to change also as an organization, and then how individually they might try something different to be able to adapt to the current circumstances. For me, like, it's, if everyone would have a little bit more self-awareness, like if we would after this webinar, if we all set the goal of cultivating a little bit more our strategic self-awareness, there would be a lot less conflict. There would be a bit more openness and empathy, and also better communication and collaboration between departments, and also increased resilience facing those change, because we're able to stop and assess what's going on and not act just on our reptilian brain. Does that answer your question, Hayu?
Yes, thank you.
So by this time, it should be quite clear for you that strategic self-awareness is a crucial skill to nurture, especially when it comes to talent development. But I need to warn you on something about self-awareness. Self-awareness is a very difficult skill to cultivate. It's hard, but and it's hard because there are many things that are coming our way and are being obstacles for us to be more self-aware. So it's not easy, but understanding why and what are the different obstacles and psychological barriers we're facing is the first step in making making self-awareness easier. So in this next section, we will have a look at 4 common obstacles and psychological barriers making self-awareness and change difficult. The first obstacle in the self-awareness journey is overcoming our ego. So increasing self-awareness can be very painful, difficult, and emotional for some. And that's because the human brain is designed to keep negative information about ourselves out to protect our ego. And our brain has many tricks up its sleeve to achieve this, like biases, cognitive distortions even in memory, when someone remembers something and then someone else remembers something else. Self-deception and self-protection are just a few examples of the tricks our brain has to protect us, to protect our ego from negative information about ourselves. Elon Musk and the Twitter fiasco is a perfect example of an ego getting in the way of a leader's self-awareness. So Elon Musk, who now owns Twitter, now referred to as X, is facing criticism for the poor handling of the platform. And the platform today has lost nearly 90% of its value since he purchased it. And there are many things and many decisions and actions that Elon Musk has made that have resulted in negative feedback from either the users or the clients. So one of them is when he took on Twitter, he decided to cut half of the workforce, and employees were so shocked that the one that were remaining, that resulted in a mass resignation of employees who were left. Then he also decided to change Twitter's name and persist in keeping it. So he changed it to X, and he absolutely wants to keep it like that, even though it's still not accepted by the public. Everyone refers to X as X, X, formerly Twitter. Even when journalists are writing articles about X, they have to remind people that X is actually referring to Twitter. He also introduced a paid subscription model and removed the verified account function. He also introduced tweet views and messaging limits, which shocked users and led to many of them quitting the platform. But more recently, Elon Musk has been receiving important criticism for allowing free speech at all costs and removing content moderators on the platform. And that's because it has allowed for a lot of hate speech to take place on the platform. And as a result of that, many companies that used to advertise on Twitter have decided to boycott the platform altogether. And this is one of the things that has impacted the Twitter's value. And it's because it's been losing a lot of money because advertisers are leaving. But how is Elon Musk reacting to that? Well, this was his response. So he says, what the advertising boycott is going to do, it's going to kill the company. The whole world will know that those advertisers killed the company, it's the fault of the advertisers, and we will document it in great detail. Let's see how Earth responds. So earlier when I was talking about a bold characteristic, Elon Musk is one leader that demonstrates a lot of characteristic of the bold derailer. So basically what we're seeing now is Elon's ego is preventing him from seeing this situation as it is. He made mistakes, and the decisions that he made are the cause of Twitter's value drop. But instead of taking responsibility for the issues, Musk is blaming the big companies for pressuring him with advertising demands. And he also seems unconcerned about losing advertisers, even though they play a big role. So, so instead of recognizing that it's his decision and his action that is actually leading to the advertisers to flee, he is just blaming them. So it really looks like Elon Musk's ego is preventing him to be self-aware and recognize that what has made him successful in the past might actually cause him to fail today and in the future, preventing him from changing his behavior despite receiving repeated rounds of feedback from the users and clients of Twitter's. All right, let's move to our second barrier. So another barrier to self-awareness and change is ambivalence. Even when people see there is a problem, people both want to change and they also don't want to change at the same time. And this can be caused by fear of the unknown, the prospect of failure, the fear of loss, or even the fear of novelty, neophobia. Kazuo Hirai, the former CEO of Sony, provides a good example of a leader whose lack of self-awareness and ambivalence toward change contributed to failure. So when he was CEO from 2012 to 2018, Hirai faced the challenge of leading a company that was struggling to adapt to the rapidly evolving landscape of consumer electronics. So despite the fact that he inherited a company that had a rich history of innovation, Sony ended up finding itself lagging behind competitors like Apple and Samsung. Hirai's leadership was known to be marked by a reluctance to acknowledge the need for fundamental changes within Sony. He failed to recognize the extent to which the market was shifting toward, for example, digital streaming services, wearable technology like our phone, Apple Watches, even iPads and other emerging trends. And this lack of self-awareness prevented him from taking decisive action to reposition Sony for success in a changing industry. So in addition to that, his ambivalence toward embracing disruptive technology further prevented Sony's ability to compete effectively against other companies. So he, instead of embracing innovation, he ended up resorting to restructuring the company and streamlining operation, and his failure to commit to innovation and adapt resulted in continued financial losses and declining market share. But ultimately, he ended up resigning, and his resignation marked the end of an era for Sony. His tenure, I think this is a good example, and it serves a cautionary tale about the dangers of leadership characterized by lack of self-awareness and ambivalence, hesitation toward should we change or should we resort to what has made us successful in the past. Next, a third major obstacle to self-awareness and change is the energy it requires. I'm sure each of you has once decided to eat better or exercise more, and you know how much energy and focus and effort and discipline and time it is needed to make a real change. But it also takes a lot of energy to be constantly self-aware, right? Our brain is incredibly efficient, and the way it's designed, well, it's designed to conserve energy and automate whatever it can whenever possible. And one way that our brain does that is through the use of mental shortcuts and resorting to old patterns or old habits. So when resources are depleted, people are most likely to engage in dark side behavior, and not being aware of your dark sides or your derailers might end up in you resorting to kind of leadership shortcuts behaviors. So while they don't require a lot of energy from us, they can be really counterproductive. And keeping those bad habits in check becomes really difficult in times of stress and over a long period of time. And we all know that it takes a long time before change can actually happen. That's actually a good transition to my last obstacle. So last but not least, another and final obstacle that we'll be looking at today is the fragility and durability of reputation. That makes self-awareness and change really difficult. It takes many good acts to be deemed good, and it takes only one bad action to be deemed bad. And this is called the asymmetric moral tipping point. The asymmetric moral tipping point is, more evidence is required to demonstrate improvement than decline. And the asymmetry is stronger when starting new action versus stopping existing one. So even sometimes when we coach leaders, and I think that's something EXPERD does as well, we will work with leaders to identify, instead of starting to do something, what they should stop doing, because actually other people will notice that more. And let me give you a good example of, or a good illustration of the asymmetric moral tipping point. Here we have Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a reputation of being highly capitalistic, right? Could you imagine that one day he could receive the Nobel Prize for world peace? I'm seeing a lot of
No.
So imagine, I don't know, something happens overnight. We all go to sleep, and then something magical happens. We wake up, and then Donald Trump claims to now be, he now claims to be wanting to fight for social justice and world peace. How would we all react? Well, that would probably be met with a lot of skepticism and resistance from many of us. So what would we do? Like, even though he would, let's say he would take humanitarian trips, and he would donate all of his fortune to social justice organization and things like that, people would closely scrutinize his past action and statements, particularly those that contradict the principle of social justice. So they would bring back his history of controversial policies, his divisive rhetoric, and also everything that he has done that marginalized certain groups. And that would make it very challenging for many of us to trust his newfound commitment to social justice. So convincing people that Trump has truly changed and is genuinely committed to fighting for social justice would be something very complex and a very challenging journey. And it would require a lot from him, but it would also require a willingness from us to reconsider our perception and beliefs. I actually have a really good and inspiring example of a French celebrity that underwent an important identity transformation. And it's a really good example of someone who has cultivated self-awareness all along, and that has successfully changed their reputation in the eyes of others as well. So for those of you who don't know, my first language is French, and so when I was growing up in Canada, I'm from the French part of Canada. There would be French rap music video, and Diams, this woman, she was a French rapper and singer, and she was super famous in the early 2000s. She had a really bold and provocative music style that were addressing social issues. She was extremely famous. And despite her success, though, Diam's personal life was marked by personal struggles with mental health issues and addiction. And in 2009, she actually decided that she would retire completely from the music industry and she would focus on her well-being and spirituality. It surprised everyone, and it took her, like, for years and years, people could not believe it, and they could not believe that that she had truly changed. And so that surprised many fans, and especially because she was so well known in the French hip hop community. However, so she underwent a profound transformation, and she really wanted to embrace a more spiritual and introspective lifestyle. And it took, I think, close to 10 years before she was back in front of a camera, and she did an interview for a documentary. And even then, so she was explaining the transformation that she underwent, and even then, people could not believe it. But now, people seems to have accepted and really believe that she has truly changed. Even though, like, she was a very rebellious rapper, and anyways, it really, her story, I find it super inspiring. It's really a powerful example of personal growth and resilience. And today she's known in the French community as someone who inspires others to pursue paths of positive change. So that's my last story for, my last celebrity story. I have case study story, but basically, so what can we learn from those obstacles and from those stories to help our talent development? Our talent develops strategic self-awareness and accelerate their change. My first recommendation is to set a foundation using data. So using valid and reliable personality assessment can give you an accurate representation of someone's reputation. Second, we recommend to make change easy by setting small achievable goals based on individual needs rather than having a one-size-fits-all approach. Because change and self-awareness requires so much energy, it's really important to hold participants of talent development programs accountable for their goals, but also create a supportive system around them. So finding mentors who can help work with them and getting their leaders and managers involved in the talent development program. And finally, and to relate to our last obstacle, it's really important to commit to Kaizen development. So Kaizen development is, Kaizen is from Japanese. It means continuous improvement. And it's important to not think of talent development as a single one and done program. Continuous development is really needed to affect real change.
And Mary, before we jump into some case studies, I would like to highlight some important points, maybe for the audience in Indonesia. Oke, baik Bapak dan Ibu. Jadi berdasarkan dari apa yang dijabarkan, memang self awareness ini merupakan fondasi gitu ya, dasar yang akan memfasilitasi seseorang untuk mencari dan menindaklanjuti feedback yang mungkin nanti akan berdampak pada reputasinya di tempat kerja. Reputasi dalam artian juga proses kerjanya juga gitu. Ini juga akan menentukan, self awareness ini juga menentukan sejauh mana efektivitas pengembangan diri seseorang juga berpengaruh dalam proses perubahan yang ada dalam organisasi. Selain itu, kita juga perlu waspada terhadap berbagai hambatan dalam melakukan perubahan, seperti yang tadi dicontohkan oleh Mary, ada ego gitu ya, membuat kita bias dalam menilai diri sendiri, serta situasi yang membuat kita maju mundur dan tidak, ini yang paling penting, tidak konsisten dalam menerapkan komitmen untuk berubah. Ini yang biasanya sering kita hadapi. I want to highlight that sometimes what you have explained, old habit die hard, is something that happen to a lot of us. Okay, Mary, you might continue.
We are only human, right?
Yes, right.
All right. Well, for the last part of today's presentation, we'll have a look at 3 case studies, really providing you with a blueprint for developing self-awareness with different goals within organizations. So you'll have access to the slides, but really we really focus on providing you with all of the details that you need if you want to copy paste and adapt to your organization. So I hope that these different case studies and sharing our methodology, so how we actually implemented the talent development program, will prove useful for you. So let's have a look at our first case study, where Hogan was leveraged to develop strategic self-awareness. I like this case study because Hogan was one of the many pieces of the puzzle. So here we're talking about a global investment management company, and they were a bit worried to learn that 65% of their new people managers felt completely unprepared for their role. So that's how they, they were a bit panicked about that statistics or that result, and they had a really strong internal team and the talent development team went on to develop a customized development experience focusing on the essential skills required for people managers. And the way that they partnered with Hogan was to develop their leaders' strategic self-awareness. So as you'll see in upcoming slides, there are many different components of the program, and Hogan was kind of it's a good example of if you already have a talent development rolling within your organization, how you can also just add in Hogan as part of everything you're already doing to accelerate talent development of your people managers. So step 1 was to define development activities. Was to define development needs. Sorry, let's not jump too far ahead. So throughout surveys and interviews that they had conducted within the organization, and they also had looked at external information, they identified the key knowledge and competencies people managers needed to master to succeed in this organization. So every bullet point except the first one here was based on competencies. But something that's that they discovered through the interviews and surveys was actually people managers didn't even know what was expected from them. So so that was something very interesting. It's always good to kind of provide the goal or provide the expectations, and that can serve then as the basis of everything. But basically, as you can see, the different development needs are very similar to a people manager, what we usually develop in people manager talent development program, you know, team challenges, conflict management, problem solving, being more inclusive and innovative, communication, collaboration across the company. I know that EXPERD is really expert at facilitating a lot of workshops on those themes as well. But yeah, these are very key issues that people managers encounter on a day-to-day basis. So once they knew what they needed to develop and work on, step 2 was defining development activities. And I have all this information because they actually shared with us the whole program, so we could better fit in Hogan. So because they are a global companies with people managers on every continent, they opted for virtual training. And following best practices, well, they started by setting a foundation using data, and they kicked off the program with a Hogan debrief for participants, so they could develop self-awareness and get to know more about their personal leadership brand. And what I mean by that is, so we assess each individual team, each individual people manager using the HPI, so the bright side of the personality, and the MVPI, the insight, and that enabled us to generate the Hogan leader focus reports. And this specific framework, it was originally developed for Microsoft as a custom solution to help leaders understand their personal leadership brand. But we thought it was so good that we actually made it an off-the-shelf solution, so anyone from any organization could use it. And so what we did is we offered individual or group debriefs for participants. Another reason why they chose Hogan was because it was a global company and they had managers across the world, and they needed to provide an assessment that can be completed in multiple languages, but that is equivalent. And that's something that Hogan was offering. And depending on where participants were based in the world, some of them could receive an individual debrief, and other ones had a group debrief. We actually, Krista, who's the managing director of APAC, and myself, we actually debriefed a group session. And during these sessions, we explained to participants what is strategic self-awareness, why it's important, and we really work on increasing each individual strategic self-awareness by offering them insights on their personal leadership brand. So the leader focus model provides information on 6 leadership focus dimensions. And when we were debriefing them, we explained what they focus on, what are their unconscious biases that are associated with each dimension, what type of culture do they create, and we gave them development tips. And participants were also asked throughout the whole subsequent session how their result may impact their leadership behaviors when it comes to the different topics that were being covered. And I know that EXPERD has also facilitated some group debriefs recently using the leader focus report, and participants had found it very insightful. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, and Mary, if you have these six leader brand, which one of the six dimension of the leader focus is the most significant to determine the leadership effectiveness?
So, in your question, Hayu, I also hear leadership effectiveness, and I think it's good to distinguish leadership emergence from leadership effectiveness. It's actually a good opportunity to do that. So we know that some personality characteristic will make some people more susceptible to be identified as potentially good leader, so to emerge as a leader. But that has nothing to do with how well they will perform. It's more, it says more about how well they get noticed. And so at Hogan, we actually differentiate between leadership and effectiveness, leadership emergence and leadership effectiveness. And we define effective leaders as leaders that build high-performing teams. So these are the leaders that can create and maintain a team that produces results. I will give a very psychologist response, which is it depends. But each dimension is important when it comes to creating and maintaining a team that produces results. And in fact, the most recent research that we've done on leadership effectiveness is suggesting that there aren't necessarily one dimension that is more important than the other. But what really determines leadership effectiveness is the leader's self-awareness. And so their capacity to stop. So there are two things. They need to be able to demonstrate various types of behaviors. So if we take the different dimensions, knowing more about what are the different type of behaviors that someone who's high on low or low on result focus, for example, that's important. That's the first step. So you need to know that there are different types of behavior. Then you need to be able to demonstrate these different behaviors. And where self-awareness and strategic self-awareness becomes really key is in the leader's ability to recognize in which situations they should behave how. So it's more about knowing. So our results show that it's more about being aware of which dimension is more natural to you and how to flex your leadership style than a specific dimension.
Okay, thank you. And Mary, I want to highlight first what we learned from the first case studies.
Do you mind? I skipped something, and I just wanted to highlight in this slide. So because I've talked about the debrief, but there were other good best practices that had been implemented, and one of them was a group case study and presentation, and that was to foster to keep participants accountable. So they had to do a case study and present it to a leadership panel, and I thought that's something that all organizations can implement at very low cost. So sorry to have interrupted you. Please
No, it's okay.
summarize.
So they make some presentation and then they need to present.
Yes.
And what is the presentation about?
So sometimes organization will give the leaders a fake problem to solve. Sometimes they will give them a real problem to solve. And we all have like urgent problems on a like all organizations have urgent problems. Others, we all have also important problems. that no one has time to give some attention. And so some organization will give participants of leadership development programs important problems to solve. And so the participant have to work as a team and to find a different solution. So it's like in action learning, and then they have to put together a presentation and pitch to the leadership panel different solutions that they are thinking would work best to fix the problem.
Oh, okay. That's nice. People can try that too.
Yeah. Other ones, I know some distributors, when they do coaching, I don't know if this is something that EXPERD does, but they will, whenever they do, they have like a coaching mandate with clients, they will require the coachee to put together a small presentation to present to their manager what they have learned about this during this coaching journey. That's another example.
Okay, so they will, it will force them to learn what they learn, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Mary. I will give some highlight. Jadi Bapak dan Ibu, untuk pengembangan leadership dapat dilakukan dengan mengenali personal leadership brand, seperti yang disampaikan oleh Mary. Mengenali personal leadership brand bukan hanya yang menonjol saja, tapi yang masih perlu dikembangkan oleh setiap leader. Awareness tentang leadership brand ini dapat menjadi dasar untuk melakukan langkah pengembangan sehingga dapat meningkatkan efektivitas seorang leader di tempat kerja. Okay, and Mary, you may continue to the next case study.
All right, our next case study is one where Hogan was brought in to support the acceleration of a high-performing team at a global pharma manufacturer. So more specifically, they had a really high-performing factory whose team needed to go from being good managers who quickly fulfills and efficiently fulfill orders to great leaders who lead innovation and change. So the goal of this team development program was to get this was to get them from being like really effective and good operational managers to being disruptive and thinking about how they can manufacture into the world more innovative products. So step one was gaining stakeholder buy-in. And at Hogan, we call this a leadership interview. So this is when we interview the management team leader, and we also, in this case, interview the program manager to ask their expectation for the talent development program. Both parties had shared their ideas and goals for the team, and whenever you do team intervention, it's really important to have the leaders buy-in, and so the team leader and the talent development program managers both fully committed to participate in the plan session and also to continue with follow-up on the team development plans after our interventions were done, and so really committing to Kaizen development. So step two was developing individual self-awareness. So best practice when you want to develop team awareness is to first start with developing individual self-awareness. And this is exactly what we did with this client. So the team members all completed all of our 3 core assessments. So our assessment on the bright side, our assessment on the dark side, and our assessment on the inside. And we provided the participants with the Leadership Forecast Series report. The Leadership Forecast Series report is our is our most complete solution. It provides tons of development feedback and also development tips, and also a lot of information about your reputation as a leader based on your assessment results. And so we were lucky to have a 90-minute coaching debrief session with each participant. And during these sessions, we work on increasing each individual strategic self-awareness by offering them insights on their reputation, including strengths, weaknesses, and values. And we also had a set of questions to gain insight on their awareness of their team strength, values, and development areas. So that relates a bit to your question earlier, how does individual awareness relates to group level awareness. So we first started, it's really important to first start with cultivating self-awareness individually first. Step 3 was, and we went into developing team awareness. So we held a 4-hour team development session, and we used the Hogan Group report to offer an analysis of the team's reputation. And the group report can also, you can also add in a benchmark. And so in this case, we added the benchmark of the benchmark of executives in the pharma industry. So the team, the leadership team could compare themselves, you know, as a management team in the pharma industry to what other executives in the same industry look like. And this was really interesting. There was a couple of insights that were generated just by comparing their scores to what other leaders in this industry tend to look like. So what we mean by team awareness is the degree to which someone understands their team's approach, their common capabilities, and how the broader organization views the strengths and opportunities of the team. So it's really about team reputation. So it's about, it's also, so it's understanding their strengths and opportunities. It's also understanding the diversity that is present within the team. We oftentimes focus on physical feature or physical diversity, but psychological and personality diversity, you know, like invisible diversity is also present, and that's important to understand and recognize how we can leverage that diversity for the goals of the team. And whenever we develop team awareness using Hogan data, that also helps them understand how they can adapt their preferred behaviors to increase effectiveness in any given situation. So this is kind of a slide just to show you how your individual reputation, individual reputation really matters, because it will drive how it will drive the team's reputation, and that team's reputation will have an impact on how effective they are as a whole. So back to our group report and our group's data. As you can see, they tend to be higher on the ambition scale than what we see in the industry. So this is the group average score, and this is the average industry score. However, multiple team members scored significantly outside the pharma industry average scores on inquisitive, as you can see, there are many, a couple of, most of them are lower than the average. And same thing for learning approach. And so that suggests that they, instead of prioritizing innovation to get ahead, they will prioritize pragmatic and proven methods to get ahead. And that was exactly the feedback that we had received from the leader and the HR person. So as part of the team session, we explored their reputation, and each individual committed to small achievable development plans in line with the insights that they had. And they also came up with a team development plan using the stop, start, keep method. So what should they stop doing? What should they start doing that that is not natural for them right now? And what should they, which strength is present and that they should keep doing? So as I've mentioned earlier, it's change and self-awareness requires time and requires a lot of effort. And what was great with this case study is that 6 months later, we did a 2-hour follow-up session to evaluate what was going well and what needed additional improvement. So the organization really committed to accountability and Kaizen development. And at the end of this whole intervention, the leader and the HR team were very pleased with the progress that the team had made. They really had upskilled their team to become leaders instead of just being managers. And they really recognized that this was an ongoing process. And when we left them, they had committed to internally continue checking on the team every 3 to 6 months to continue to support the development efforts.
This is a very interesting client case studies. It's demonstrating how team members, individual self-awareness comes together to create team awareness. It looks like multiple organization success factors were present to foster this team awareness and development. But I'm curious, what about the organization culture? From your experience, and Mary, how can organization create a culture that promote strategic self-awareness through the whole organization? If you say about individual and then organization, how about the culture itself?
Well, the culture of an organization is really what is being valued and rewarded in an organization. So if you want, as an organization, to increase self-awareness or foster self-awareness within your leaders or within all of your employees, that means that you have to take concrete steps that are in line with rewarding self-awareness. So you cannot say, be more self-aware, and then people demonstrating more self-awareness, wanting to have a conversation about weaknesses, wanting to provide each other feedback, and then punish them for having those conversations. To the contrary, that means that you will, like as an organization, you need to reward and give visibility to leaders that model self-awareness. That's another factor that is really important for self-awareness culturally is promoting psychological safety. And so creating an environment where employees feel safe to express themselves and speak up, and that's because they are more likely to engage in self-reflection and share their thoughts, ideas, and concerns openly. So really encouraging feedback and giving the spotlight and rewarding leaders who and leaders are not always managers. They can be employees, but they show leadership by enacting in a self-aware manner.
Okay, so it's also can be developed into a culture, right?
Yes.
Okay, before we continue to our another case studies, again, I want to give some highlight and merit. Baik,
Yes.
Bapak dan Ibu, seperti tadi yang dijelaskan bahwa mengembangkan tim itu juga membutuhkan awareness untuk memahami apa yang menjadi keunikan tiap individu maupun keberagaman tim secara keseluruhan. Awareness ini juga menjadi landasan bagi tim untuk dapat menyepakati kira-kira tindakan atau langkah apa atau action plan apa yang dapat diterapkan dalam meningkatkan efektivitas kerja tim. Jadi awareness ini dari individual, kemudian naik ke tim, kemudian naik ke organisasi. Oke. You may continue, Anne Mary.
Thank you, Hayu. Okay, so for our last case study, before the end of the presentation, this last case study is extremely interesting because it provides a real case example of how a talent development program can significantly impact company level metrics. And in this case, we actually had some data on turnover rates. So this is the story of a global IT company that is headquartered in the US, and they had a big problem. They had a baseline turnover rate of 32%. That is huge. It was way above industry average, but the real problem was that the people that left were oftentimes their high potential or their highest performing employee. And so this company sought our help to identify and develop high potential talent that would stay at the organization. So they had two criteria, or we had like a combined goal. We needed to come up with a solution to identify who's likely to be the highest performing or succeed as they progress within the organization, but also who would stay. So those people were like our other goal was also to identify who was most likely to stay. Because this company really wanted to improve succession planning and development for leadership roles. So step one was creating a success profile. A success profile is something that we do at Hogan. And I want to point out that this is also something that EXPERD can absolutely help you with. They have a really strong research team and have done several studies using Hogan data like this for various clients. So a success profile basically is we will do some research to identify a characteristic that helps us predict something. And so in this case, we research the most important personality qualities for successful leadership performance and to help reduce turnover. And this was the result. So we found out that on a competency basis, the top performing high potential employees at the organization tend to score high on the competency, communicate proactively, act decisively, accept challenges willingly, and also tolerating ambiguity. And we added an additional step, which was we also researched who was most likely to leave. So we ran some surveys with turnover intention, and we found that the high potentials employees that were most likely to leave tended to make decisions slowly, and they also appeared reluctant to take individual action. So they tended to rely more on others or their colleagues before initiating anything. So we created that success profile, and once we had that, once we had kind of those criterias, that helped us actually identify which participant could stay within, could hop in the high potential development program. So after we chose the participants who were most likely to perform and who were most likely to stay at the organization, we offered them individual coaching session using the Leadership Forecast series again to help them develop their strategic self-awareness. And once we did that, we worked with the organization to create individualized development plans based on their values, their strengths, and their risk. And this information was provided by the different core assessments that now you must be very familiar with. So the high potentials, based on the feedback that they received on their personality, had to create a 3-month, 6-month, and 12-month achievable goal plan. And everything was individualized. And they were also, that was really nice. They were also offered mentoring opportunities from different supervisors across the organization. And this is what happened after 4 years. So we have some return on investment data that really captures the success of this program. 4 years after the implementation of that success profile, in combination with the high potential talent development program, turnover went from 32% to 3%, with nearly all high potentials remaining at work and remaining in the company. So that's one of our best case study. The organization was so happy that they had successfully developed an excellent pipeline for developing strong leaders, strong future leaders.
And Mary, beside the turnover, the self-awareness also impact the performance of the employee who stay in the organization?
We did not measure that, but from what I know about whenever we implement Hogan in organizations' talent development program, the strategic self-awareness concept and like the opportunity to understand how you might think that you're someone who's very introverted, but then when you receive your results and it's compared to the general population, you might actually be more on the extroverted side. And so better understanding what are your strengths and your limitations and your values usually end up in people being more effective at work, but also being more aware of more sensitive toward their colleagues, like, oh, what about my colleague? What are their needs? What are their values? How can I better interact with them? So I'm guessing that if people didn't leave, the work environment might have improved as well, because that plays a lot in that.
Okay. Before we continue, I will give some highlight again about the case study and Mary. Oke, baik Bapak dan Ibu, perencanaan suksesi talent yang potensial di organisasi dapat dilakukan dengan beberapa langkah, dimulai dengan membandingkan top talent yang perform dan yang tidak perform, kemudian memberikan coaching dengan menggunakan personality assessment, serta mendiskusikan individual development plan yang perlu dimonitor di setiap 3 bulannya. Dan dilihat bagaimana return of investment yang sudah dilakukan terhadap penurunan turnover-nya itu sendiri. Jadi itu memang perlu, selain development juga ada proses monitoring serta proses evaluasi yang perlu dijalankan terhadap proses pengembangan yang sudah dilakukan. Okay, and Mary, you may continue.
Well, I will continue, but just for one slide, and just to share some of my final thoughts summarizing the key messages and key takeaways I hope people attending the webinar will take away from it. So again, here I want to stress that what I like the most about self-awareness is because it gives us the power to influence things. It also gives us the power to recognize what we control, like, you know, what is within our control, what is within our influence, but also things that is completely outside of us. I have warned you and I have stressed that a couple of times. Self-awareness is not easy. It's painful sometimes, but I hope that that now you have a better understanding of why it might be difficult and why it might be painful as a first step to help you individually develop yourself or help your talent develop themselves within the organizations that you work in. Next point is using personality assessment as a foundation can really help your organization scale up your talent development programs. These are easily administered to multiple participants at once, and you can do group debriefs, and that's really an easy way to accelerate strategic self-awareness within your leadership pipeline. Don't forget to adopt an individualized and customized approach. So even though please remember to offer some customization options within your organizational development plan. Don't forget also to ask for accountability and to implement a support system to help increase your program's effectiveness. And last but not least, where you will get the most ROI is in dedicating your efforts to building a Kaizen development culture, where continuous improvement is really a lifestyle and not just a one-time program. So that is all for me for now, and maybe there are some final thoughts you'd like to say to Hayu before we go into the Q&A session.
Okay, thank you, and Mary, for your insightful presentation. There are a lot of interesting points that I got from your presentation. The first is self-awareness sendiri adalah fondasi yang penting. I'm sorry, I'm talking in Indonesia. I give some highlight for the audience. Self-awareness adalah fondasi yang penting untuk mendorong talent untuk berubah atau mengembangkan diri. Berikutnya adalah asesmen kepribadian dapat membantu talent untuk memahami area apa yang menjadi kekuatan maupun pengembangan dirinya, sehingga talent dapat menyesuaikan performa kerjanya menjadi lebih efektif. Berikutnya, program pengembangan ini perlu difasilitasi dengan adanya sesi coaching, individual development plan, maupun penerapan Kaizen yang berfokus bagaimana pengembangan individu dilihat sebagai sebuah proses yang ini highlight-nya adalah terus-menerus. Jadi pengembangannya bukan hanya satu kali kemudian selesai, tapi sebuah pengembangan yang berlangsung terus-menerus. So, and Mary, now is the time for question and answer session. I see that there's already some question in the chat.
Let me open it.
Okay. The first one from Bapak Yusuf Rismunandar. Good afternoon, and Mary, I would ask some question. For efficiency and effectiveness, nowadays, many companies are focusing on implementing digital culture. Is there a way to create self-awareness in digital culture and carry out digital assessment and fill the gap so the companies can create digital talent?
That's a very interesting question. I have found myself relying more and more on new digital tools that are available for us to cultivate our self-awareness. ChatGPT is a good one. You can use ChatGPT for many different things. You can even put in your Hogan results and ask him to coach. Ask him or her. Maybe ChatGPT is a woman. He has good listening skills. But yeah, you can ask some questions to ChatGPT. You can ask it to coach yourself based on your results. You can share some goals. So that's a great tool to leverage. So that's one of it. I know that we are also working currently on some research. So our data science team is currently working on a technical brief that will identify the critical competencies for digital culture. Yes, so once that is available, I can share it with EXPERD, and EXPERD can share it with this participant.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is also interesting from Dania Dewi. In my experience, the hardest part in developing talents is how we keep the commitment from the talent and the manager to implement the IDP, to implement the individual development program. Is there any tip from Hogan to overcome this challenge? Old habit die hard.
I agree that this is a very common obstacle that we encounter. You know, we invest so many efforts in building and rolling out those development programs, or even providing a debrief on someone's personality assessment. But then what happens next, right? It's a lot of investment, and we don't want it to sleep in a drawer in our desk. It depends on the manager's belief of how important it is. My best strategy to keep the commitment from the employee and the manager is to force them to have meetings about it. So if the talent team can organize, so if the HR team can organize those meetings, that's very important. Well, that can help a lot. Oftentimes people are thinking about having that meeting, but they are always pushing it back. It's not necessarily because they don't want to be held accountable. It's because there are so many other things that are that seems like a more important priority, but by acting like it is a priority, well, you make it become a priority, and you make it happen. So that's one strategy. The other strategy is you can this can be a bit not controversial, but different people have different opinions about that. But including in the performance evaluation or the performance assessment, the performance assessment program or performance management program, sorry, a clear objective and a clear goals that the talent has to invest time in their development, but also that the manager needs to invest time with their own employees to promote their development as a key performance criteria, can also help in sustaining the commitment and sending a very clear message that development is key to the organization's success.
Okay. There's another question. Hello, Miss and Mary. We know that admitting and acknowledging weakness is important to increase the self-awareness to reach the goals in talent development, especially in this case for our organization. However, we know as well that ego makes someone hard to admit and acknowledge their weakness, even somehow denial about their situation. So do you think there's a specific way as an initial step to break their belief that they are great or they are perfect enough to do their role?
I guess it depends on how big the ego is. Like there are some egos that will be very difficult to, there are some shields or barriers that will be very difficult to put down. But one strategy would be to ask them what, invite them to reflect on some of their strengths and weaknesses. And I know that some organizations also use 360 assessments to supplement different talent development or like self-reflection and self-awareness initiative. And sometimes when the data of everyone is speaking, that can actually be quite enlightening and quite shocking. But I think the most important step in breaking someone's belief is being patient with them and providing them feedback in a kind way, in a way that helps them. When you encounter resistance, if you push to, like, the more you push, the more there will be resistance. So a bit like Taekwondo that uses someone's strength or forces against themselves. I would recommend using a Taekwondo approach for big egos.
Okay, then we need to learn what is Taekwondo. Thank you, Bu Fitri. Okay, there is one another question from Rini Aini. Miss Anne, Mary, what are the strategic points on these Hogan tools that distinguish from others? Since there are a lot of personality tools out there, and what is the most powerful aspect for Hogan in doing the process? Is it the personality test itself or the method feedback session to elaborate the self-awareness?
Thank you, Rini, for asking this question. So I have worked with other tools than Hogan before, and there are a couple of key points and key characteristics about Hogan that I find really, really interesting. There's no other personality assessment that has this approach to look at personality, so the bright side, dark side, and inside. There might be some others, but it's not as comprehensive as our framework because we invented it. And but so that I find very interesting because in regular personality assessments, most of the time you'll get information about the bright side of your personality. And I actually had a recent coaching case where someone's bright side personality was almost all in the low scores, but their dark side or their HDS results were all in the highs, and that tells a completely different stories. This person has a lot of strength that are not being captured by necessarily just a tool that captures the bright side. What I like the most about Hogan is the equivalency between different languages. So especially today, there is so much immigration, and we're really in a global economy, and having the ability to assess different people in different languages in an equivalent way. And I can say it's equivalent because I'm actually going to be presenting at SIOP alongside our Director of Product Innovation on the equivalency of our 39 translations. So I think that's very unique. You have, you really have a tool that can, that different people across the world can complete in different languages, but then it's like a Google Translate. At the end of the day, when you put the data all together, you're really bringing a common language and a common framework to look at different people sitting across the world. So I think that's something that is really interesting in itself and very unique.
Oke, thank you, Mary. Bapak dan Ibu, ada yang masih mau bertanya? Saya persilakan. Kalau ada yang mau membuka mic, langsung bertanya kepada Mary juga boleh. If there is any question to you, they want to open the mic. Oh, there's another question. Mbak Dita mau open mic aja atau gimana? Silakan.
Do you want me to read it? That's
no, I over the. Oh, oke. Baik, Bu Dita, saya akan bacakan. Hello, Miss and Mary. During your own self-awareness, what is specific strategies or exercise that you found effective in gaining deeper insight for your strength, weakness, and area to be improved? How it impact your career?
Okay, well, one exercise that I found very interesting was, of course, completing personality assessment. That's something. Oh, and actually, I forgot to answer earlier. Is it the personality test itself or the method, you know, like the feedback session? But my answer will probably answer both questions. So the results are interesting, but having the ability to discuss it in a, like having a space to discuss it and reflect about it with someone else is really powerful. I don't know if there are coaches in our audience today, but like that's the best gift, that giving this space, that self-reflection space to others. And as a coachee, taking time, putting time aside to reflect about yourself and reflect about how some of your behaviors might have had positive or negative impacts on others is really is what has had the biggest biggest impact on me. And yeah, and probably this is what has had the biggest impact on my career, because there's always something else. Like, I'm a problem solver. I like working on different problems, and I like to keep busy, but having those spaces and those conversations, and having someone give me their perspective on something else, like receiving feedback, proactively asking for feedback, that's something I've been doing quite a lot. These conversations were the ones that really helped me, I feel, improve. And also, I know that like this is something that will go on for the rest of my life, because whatever is working right now might not work in future situations. So yeah.
Okay, I have the last question. Okay, wait. Hi, Mary. Are the tests also developed culturally, fit various region and organizational operation or institution, such as education, for instance, other than being accessible across language? If so, in what way? This will be our last question for this evening.
This is an excellent question, Rashni. Hogan's personality assessment were originally designed for predicting workplace performance. And yes, they have been developed to culturally fit various regions and various types of organization. We have so many different clients, and we have so many different people who have completed it in different settings. And there are different ways that we ensure that our test is culturally appropriate. Is appropriate for different cultures and different markets. And the most important way is having local partners like EXPERD working alongside us whenever we want to translate the assessment. We just had a case yesterday where we're updating some interpretative text in the report, and our translation team contacted Kiki, that some of you might know, and they asked her, can you help us translate this? And so working closely with local experts and local language experts is something that really helps us. So that's kind of from the input side. Then we run some analysis, and we make sure that that the different languages are, or different translations that we have available are equivalent. And sometimes it will happen, there are some items that work for US English, but then it doesn't work in a certain region. So, for example, we have a Middle East version, Middle East version of English, where, so in US English, one of our item was, I like to have a good time and drink and good drinks. And obviously in some Middle Eastern markets, and even in Indonesia, that would not indicate the same thing. So this item was flagged, and we actually changed it to better reflect what we were trying to capture. So we are continuously looking at the items, how they behave, and then at a broader level, we also make sure that we also look at averages across different regions and different cultures, and we also conduct I don't know why I have a blank, but we also conduct analysis to make sure that our test isn't discriminatory, different on gender. So Hogan doesn't discriminate on gender. It doesn't discriminate on race or ethnicity, on age. It's basically it's very it's non-discriminatory on various socio-demographical variables.
Okay. Continuing with your answer, we want to give information about the Hogan certification. If the audience interested into knowing Hogan more and using Hogan, Bapak dan Ibu sekalian, kami ingin menginformasikan tentang Hogan Certification Workshop. Jadi expert selaku distributor Hogan Assessment di Indonesia menyelenggarakan Hogan Certification Workshop bagi Bapak Ibu yang tertarik mempelajari dan mendalami cara menginterpretasikan skor Hogan dan menggunakan berbagai report Hogan seperti Hogan Leader Focus dan Leadership Forecast Series yang dijelaskan sebelumnya, ataupun report Hogan lain untuk pengembangan talent di organisasi. Sertifikasi Hogan ini telah terakreditasi oleh lembaga profesional di bidang HR, manajemen, dan industri organisasi seperti American Psychological Association, HR Certification Institute, Society for Human Resource Management, dan International Coaching Federation. Untuk Bapak dan Ibu yang belum pernah mengikuti sertifikasi Hogan dapat mengikuti sertifikasi di level 1. Setelah mengikuti sertifikasi, Bapak dan Ibu bisa menggunakan report Hogan secara mandiri dalam konteks yang lebih luas, seperti menginterpretasikan hasil dan memberikan feedback berdasarkan hasil tersebut. Bapak dan Ibu juga otomatis akan tergabung dalam Hogan Alumni Club. Melalui wadah ini, Bapak dan Ibu bisa mendapatkan kesempatan untuk belajar dan networking dengan sesama praktisi Hogan untuk saling sharing dan memperdalam penggunaan Hogan dalam pekerjaan Bapak dan Ibu. Sementara itu, bagi Bapak dan Ibu yang sudah menjadi alumni di level 1, tapi ingin memperdalam lagi kemampuan dalam melakukan interpretasi terhadap hasil Hogan Assessment, kami juga akan mengadakan sertifikasi level 2 di bulan Juli nanti. Bagi Bapak dan Ibu yang berminat atau ingin bertanya-tanya lebih lanjut, dapat menghubungi tim marketing kami di marketing@expert.com atau rekan-rekan expert yang lainnya. Jadi boleh kontak ke kami kalau Bapak dan Ibu tertarik untuk memperdalam Hogan atau menggunakan Hogan sebagai assessment dalam membantu dan mendukung Bapak dan Ibu mengembangkan talent di organisasi. Akhirnya sampai juga kita di penghujung webinar kita hari ini. Terima kasih banyak atas kesediaan Bapak dan Ibu mengikuti webinar ini hingga akhir. Semoga materi maupun diskusi hari ini bermanfaat bagi Bapak dan Ibu untuk mengembangkan talent-talent di organisasinya masing-masing. So big thanks to Anne Mary for doing such awesome job today. We love to have you back in the future event. Even we love to have you back in Jakarta. We will wait you here.
Thank you so much, Hayu, and thank you to the whole expert team and to all participants that are still there. Please don't hesitate to connect with experts. They really are the Hogan thought leader in Indonesia. And thank you so much. It was my pleasure.
Thank you. Baik, Bapak dan Ibu semua, sampai jumpa pada kesempatan berikutnya. Terima kasih atas partisipasi dan kontribusinya.
Thank you, Mbak Hayu. Thank you, Miss Ana.
Thank you, gracias, 감사합니다, 아리가또, merci, 谢谢, thank you, thank you, thank you, oh, thank you, gracias, 감사합니다, 아리가또, merci, gracias.